In the great majority of the coastal zones in the world, there is a barrier between the continent and the ocean. Besides the coastal dunes, there is another natural protector for the land ecosystem, the mangrove forests. In certain coasts, there are barriers like the huge cliffs in northern Baja California. There are others where land is protected by huge sand dunes. The area of Mandinga, Veracruz, is protected not only by sand dunes, but also by large mangrove forests. This is the mangrove seed. The reproduction of these trees happens by these propagules, which, when detached from the mangrove, float on the water until they find a proper place to release their roots. A single mangrove tree starts retaining sediment from the water. The same mangrove tree can create a whole colony of trees by a river edge, or form mangrove islands in the midst of a lagoon. A clear example is shown in Campeche, a formation of small mangrove islands with a low water level during the day, shows the soggy sediment where many propagules rooted. Frigate birds, roseate spoonbills, little blue herons, and some other birds roam these fragile islands. Some of these interesting forests give home to great populations of frigate birds, but they are also perfect nourishing places for brown pelicans. On this mangrove island, there are at least 4 types of birds whose main purpose here is to have a safe nest and refuge. When tide is low, one could try to walk on the mangrove's roots. However, this is not an easy task, even for the birds who dwell here. But this same difficulty to walk here is one of the main reasons why many consider this habitat their favorite. The mangrove forest provides with protection to smallest and privacy to adult birds.
El bosque brinda protección a los más pequeños y privacidad a los mayores.
This is why these places are a paradise for many creatures.
Es por eso que estos lugares son un paraíso para muchas especies.
Mangrove forests here are an excellent source of food for medium-sized fish like peje lagarto.
Los manglares aquí son una excelente fuente de alimento para grandes peces como el peje lagarto.
This fish is also a great source of food for fishermen in Tabasco.
Es también motivo de frecuente caza para los pescadores.
So far, it is not considered a threat for the species. A great variety of fish use the mangrove roots as refuge. Just like for birds on the surface, the mangrove roots makes it difficult for hunters to access their prey.
Tal como sucede para las aves en la superficie, las raíces de los mangles dificultan a ciertos depredadores.
Other important inhabitants of the mangrove forests are the crustaceans. Some of them filter the water like the hermit covers the mangroves. Through the burrows they dig, allowing a more pure water from the plankton and on the sediments.
Un agua más pura hacia el plancton y los sedimentos.
Another type of crab utilizes different hairs to clean the bacteria in the sand and hence use it as food.
Para limpiar las bacterias de los granos de la arena y así poder consumirla como alimento.
The crabs and crayfish that dwell in these waters are an important source of income for some of the people that dwell near these mangrove forests. Shrimp also roams these rich waters, attracting fishermen. The difference between white and blue shrimp is the size of the beak. It's smaller on the white shrimp. Not only humans hunt shrimp in mangrove forests. Great groups of flamingos gather in this estuary to get an important part of their diet. Pink shrimp is the main food for flamingos. This provides with the carotenoid pigment to flamingos. After flamingos eat them, the carotenoid is dissolved in the fats It is later deposited in the face, feathers, and flamingos' legs.
Y patas de los flamingos. Las mareas altas que llenan los bosques de mangle.
The high tides that fill up the mangrove forests have pushed out a colony of pink flamingos from Celestine wetlands. However, the northern winds brought this group of cormorants to reproduce here.
Los cormoranes arribaron para reproducirse aquí.
Not only waters in mangrove forests are rich in nutrients. The mangrove leaves are saturated with tannic acid, a substance used by the mangrove to prevent its leaves to be eaten, since this substance reduces the digestive capacity in most animals. However, creatures like the Saraguato monkey have evolved to tolerate this acid, making of the mangrove leaves their main food here. In Nayarit, the Great Mangrove Forest extension have the efforts of a group in the rescue of the American crocodile species. It is here, in the greatest mangrove forests of the Pacific, where the largest population of American crocodiles inhabit. The American crocodile prefers the mangrove forests, wetlands, and deltas as home.
El cocodrilo americano prefiere los manglares, las marismas y las desembocaduras de ríos.
There are very few places for the American crocodile in Mexico. This one is amongst the less disturbed ones by humans. The sightseeing of flying fish here proved the abundance of food in these waters. But there are also some places where humans have learned to enjoy of these forests and its inhabitants. During the last decades, the ecologic tourism arrived to some of the mangrove forests on the Mexican coasts. The exploration of these places by people can be made along the mangrove trees lines and on the waters that traverse these forests.
Y es de esa manera que se aprecia una belleza única al recorrer estos entornos.
Mangrove areas in Quintana Roo are very diverse in their appearance. In the Yucatan Peninsula, one can find red mangroves, yellow and black mangroves, as well as button mangroves. The mangrove tree that is less tolerant to salty waters is the red one. It filters the salt through membranes in the roots. The most salt-tolerant mangrove tree here is the black one, being found closer to the deltas. The mangals or mangrove forests are surrounded by lagoons, and they contain in their habitat rivers, canals, and water stagnation areas. These water canals were once used by the Mayan culture as a commercial route. In regions located between the low or submerged mangroves, in these areas, called petén, jaguars roam the solid ground. The diversity of water formations in the Yucatan Peninsula is exotic. Cenotes, lagoons, and underground rivers connect jungles to mangrove forests. This beautiful area in southeast Mexico is commonly affected by hurricanes. During 2007, Hurricane Dean struck hard, destroying parts of the Yucatan Canal. The port of Mahahual lost many acres of mangles. However, the greatest damage was made to the littoral, the beaches, where some decades before, humans had extracted great areas of mangrove forests to build tourist infrastructure, leaving the mangrove forest barrier behind the port, and this one lacked of natural protection. In 2012, another hurricane came for more, but this time it was earnest, not as strong as the previous one. Many mangrove zones have absorbed the impact of strong winds in the Yucatan Peninsula. However, mangrove forests have the capacity to recover after strong hurricane impacts.
Cobran vida después de un tiempo.
The major problem appears when mangrove trees are extracted from the roots. Many of the mangrove zones in Mexico have been destroyed by humans. By different kinds of interests, mangrove forests have been extracted and lost. Only in the last few decades, Mexico has lost 30% of its mangrove forests.
contaminando también.
Contamination from different industries has contributed to these forest loss throughout the years.
Esta degradación del hábitat de mangles lleva mucho más de 20 años en México.
Still, there are some pristine mangrove forests in Mexico, where waters, skies, plants and animals reflect a perfect environment's health and harmony. In this particular area, the mangroves are immersed in a wetland.
Reflejan una perfecta armonía. En esta zona, el manglar está hundido en un humedal.
The mangrove forest in central Baja is in transition with the Vizcaíno Desert, an area that geographically belongs to the Sonoran Desert. A lagoon separates the mangrove forest from a barrier of coastal dunes. To the east, across the sea, we encounter with the hot Sonoran Desert. The Seri natives of this area are blessed with a tiny mangrove forest. The extreme north of Mexico comprises the smallest mangrove forests, and even some of these are affected by human development.
Algunas de estas zonas también son afectadas por el hombre.
The formation and success of mangrove forests needs high temperatures and humid climate. These ecosystems are formed in deltas, estuaries, and lagoons.
Estos ecosistemas se forman en deltas, estuarios y lagunas.
Some say the most successful and rich mangrove forests are formed in tropical and equatorial regions, where there is a lower salt percentage in the waters throughout the year.
Menor cantidad de sal en las aguas.
Water from the mangrove forest is discharged out in the ocean during the early hours of a day. Towards the end of the daylight, the ocean liberates its strong currents in the mangrove forest through the estuary. During this time, the tide immerses nearly a meter of the forest in water. Mexico is blessed with the fifth largest mangrove forest area in the world, a unique habitat, and of a great importance for the continent, the coast, and for a vast variety of life, including us. I hope that together the efforts and consciousness of the governments, the private sector, and the local human communities of all of us can provide these forests with the protection we have gotten from them for so long.